Hi, everyone. This is Eric Pennington with the Spirit of EQ, and welcome to the Spirit of EQ Videocast. With me today, I have Steve Goodner of Goodner Strategic Consulting, and Steve is the owner, coach. I want to say, Steve, there's another word in there for you as well. Did I miss one word, or is that good?
Well, add whatever you want, Eric. I'm fine with whatever you decide to add.
All right, I'm going to say awesome leader.
Ah,
Does that work? So, Steve, can you tell the audience a little bit about what Goodner Consulting, Strategic Consulting does?
yeah, that's actually why we changed the name to GSCFIt. So what we do is we help get the people side right in organizations.
Gotcha.
And we have kind of an acronym we use, FIT. FIT is focused intentional transformation. So that's change efforts, coaching. We also have finding ideal talent and forming ideal teams, which is really a holistic approach to getting the people side in alignment with the strategic goals of an organization.
Gotcha. So I had a conversation with a Vistage chair on a previous episode, and he said that one of the big issues for most of his groups, and as I know you're familiar with Vistage, the CEOs of mid-market to small companies, is that talent thing.
Yeah.
Now, you're in the Dallas, Texas area, if I remember right.
That's right.
Okay. So we're up here in Ohio in the Midwest. So are you hearing some of that same kind of stuff, that's the big challenge?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a challenge from multiple perspectives. The first is finding talent that not only fits the role of the position, but fits the culture of the organization. Because that's just as critical. People leave just as often, probably more often, because of a bad culture fit than they do because it's a skill issue. Most of the time, it's not a skill issue.
Okay.
The other thing is it's a tough marketplace right now for talent. I mean, unemployment is low. And so finding good talent that fits, and not just a good fit, we want the right fit.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So we have a lot of proprietary processes that we've come up with over the years to help do that. And of course, at the foundation of that is the assessments that we use to really get insight into people.
Gotcha. So from a selfish perspective, obviously the Spirit of EQ is involved in the emotional intelligence coaching, training, development with some of the same assessments. I know your company uses some of the same that we do. So what impact is or can emotional intelligence have on that culture fit that you mentioned?
Oh, I'm not sure where to start. Think of it this way. If you're an owner or a senior leader in an organization, you have a choice of just tolerating the culture and letting it develop itself.
Okay.
Or you can intelligently design the culture and the workplace community that you want. And foundational to that, if you choose that second pathway, and want to intelligently design that workplace community, then emotional intelligence is the foundation that allows you to do that. It's the solid foundation. Then you can build your house to look whichever way you want.
Right.
But if you don't have connection and trust and shared purpose around your effort, then it's very difficult to be able to grow the way you want to.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to throw out a quote to you, Steve, that I heard, this is probably 10 years ago. And it really, really kind of rocked my world when I heard it. And it's from Howard Schultz of Starbucks. and he was in an interview, and they were asking him about, so what can I do to change my culture in my company? How can I, because it's not the way that we want, and we need to make it better. And that was kind of the sort of preface.
Right.
And he said, you can't. And, the camera goes to the guy. He's kind of looking like, what do you mean? Like, I can't. He said, here's the thing about culture. You've got to get it right at the beginning, because after and I don't know if he used the words, once the horse is out of the barn, it's really, really hard to change it. Now, coming from Howard Schultz and in the setting he was in, part of me wondered, okay, he's probably being, kind of controversial on purpose, right? But there was something that stuck for me. And I think there's a lot of times, this is what companies can miss, especially the new ones, the startups and whatnot, is that they totally gloss over or just totally ignore the idea of what kind of culture they want to build.
Yeah.
They may have that, well, we want to make sure that everybody feels included or inclusive. It's an inclusive environment. It's diverse or whatever. But sometimes that can be talking points, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going in a long-winded way, Steve, but what are your thoughts about that? I mean, Schultz's comments is partly right, isn't it?
Yeah, it's right in a lot of ways. Number one, culture is a direct outcome of your values if it's authentic.
Okay.
Cultures that are, like you said, those that just give lip service to their values or to what they'd like to see, or some utopian idea
right.
of what a workplace community should look like, they fail 100% of the time, because there's no passion and there's no greater purpose that drives the values into the culture of the organization. There has to be a direct link between the values of the founders
mm-hmm.
and the culture. And we see it all the time. Well, but this is what we want. And I ask them, but how do you act?
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I'm not a popular guy. What can I say? Right?
Well, hey, here's to your unpopularity, Steve, in that regard. But wow, yeah, that's a tough conversation, is it not?
It is. It is. And what I'm trying to get them to understand is that sustainable growth, sustainable success only comes through people. And it only comes through an alignment of people around purpose and process. You have to put those three things together. When those three things are brought together in alignment and in balance,
mm-hmm.
you get the synergistic outcomes that you want. And you get a workplace community that's fun to work in, that everybody loves to show up on Mondays. But it takes work. There's effort involved in that process, and it starts from the top down.
That's a really good point. And Steve, to kind of, bring, just to the base level, if you will, when I heard you say about the ownership or the leadership's values, I'm going to throw it out to you, and you can tell me if I'm tracking with what you were saying. So if I'm that senior level leader in that mid-market business, and I was part of the founding of the company, and we said at the beginning, our mission is to improve society along with growing our business. And improving society is making sure we have a role in making sure that people are able to eat, that they have enough food, and I want to make sure that people can get adequate health care. That is a bedrock value for me as a founder. Is that a value that you build that culture around? Is that kind of where you were going with that?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about what are the right values.
Right.
And when it really comes down to it, the values are the things that are part of your life story. They are the things that will drive your autobiography. What is it about Eric that makes him who he is? What does he hold at the highest level of importance? It's so easy for people to use things like integrity and honesty, and those are great. Those are wonderful values, but values that don't have real life energy
Yeah.
behind them
Yep.
don't carry into the culture of an organization. So be authentic, identify what it is that makes you who you are. And a perfect example of this, I was talking to a senior leader at a pretty good sized company the other day,
Mm-hmm.
about 100, 125 employees right now.
Mm-hmm.
And well, okay, they're going from 100 to 125. We're working on that process.
Right. I
Um,
guessed that.
but I asked him, what what drives you? Because he's one of the most driven individuals I've seen, but not as much from an overbearing point of view as
Mm-hmm.
just an unbelievable amount of grit and perseverance.
Okay.
And he said, well, I grew up boxing, and I learned when I was boxing, you're going to take punches. And if you quit when you take a punch, you're not a boxer. You know, to be a real boxer, you have to understand that it doesn't always go your way.
Hmm.
But there has to be a love of the sport that transcends that that pain. And that's what I ask leaders. What are the passions, the values that you have that transcend the pain, that transcend the frustrations, that
Mm-hmm.
allow you to continue to do what you do well, even in the face of adversity? Those are values that have legs.
Is that kind of maybe the fuel, right?
Yeah, very
Yeah.
much so.
Because you know what, Steve, it's interesting you mentioned that because I'm kind of putting this together in my head, you know, based on some of the things you mentioned there. I had an opportunity to have a conversation with a gentleman who their holding company has about 2,000 employees. And he was telling me about this program that they wanted to introduce. It was very people centric, employee centric, almost to a place of where I kind of was shocked that he was going to do it because it was, you know, it's kind of like this is not your everyday type thing. And I
Right.
won't bore our audience or you with all those nitty gritty details, but I asked him, I said, what was there a certain event or a catalyst that made you say, we got to do this? And, you know, he said, I don't think there was like this specific aha moment or, you know, something, some watershed moment or whatever. He said, I just can't stand to see people stuck.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting there going, okay, this makes sense.
Mm.
I mean, to hear someone say, I could almost imagine someone saying, I just can't see someone not having enough to eat. Because when I grew up,
Yeah.
sometimes that was an issue. And I think those stories are there for just about every leader, right? I mean, I know that it could be a little difference, a little different color here and there, situation and all that. Do you find that sometimes leaders are kind of reluctant to go there? Or,
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny because with emotional intelligence and the advent of the neuroscience over the last, 20, 25 years or so,
mm-hmm,
we're realizing that the application to business is we're bringing things back full cycle to where those stories in our lives that create the character and traits that are within us are actually the material that makes the person,
yeah,
that creates the uniqueness that you have, that is why you're in business in the first place. It's why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. I
mm-hmm,
think what many leaders and owners do is think, well, there must be a very specific template that we should follow. And there's some good things out there. And I'm not saying go at this with no structure.
yeah, right, sure,
There's a very specific pattern, but when it comes down to it, the reason that you are where you are is because you bring something unique to the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we see organizations fail, it's usually around getting away from their core competencies, their core unique strengths, the things that made them who they are in the first place, and trying to become something they're not. And that in itself, you know, that the person you are talking to sounds like a kindred spirit for me, because I hate to see people stuck. I hate to see that struggle that people have, because there's most of the, and there's a term I use called stuckedness. Most of that is self-imposed. It comes from inside us.
Mm-hmm.
And emotional intelligence is the key that unlocks the lock of those chains of bondage that hold people down, those self-imposed roadblocks.
You know, that's a good segue, because I wanted to ask you a little bit about on two sides, right? One, we talked about the talent issue, finding, developing, all of that. The first part is how are you seeing leaders leverage EQ, emotional intelligence, to improve that, you know, move it to the next level, whatever you want to use as your descriptor?
Right. Yeah. So for the next 2 hours, let's talk about how that's working in leadership.
I'd love to talk to you for 2 hours.
Just kidding, everybody. The ones who truly understand the impact of emotional intelligence see it as, let's start with the end in mind. Well, you know, the Simon Sinek approach, okay?
Yep.
What are the outcomes? Greater resilience, higher productivity, higher performance, higher functioning teams, higher profitability, better gross margins. All those are the outcomes of higher emotional intelligence in the workplace. And I can show you study after study after study that proves that out, if it's done correctly. And bottom line, that's why I'm using the tools of 6 seconds, because everybody else kind of leaves you at data and they say, good luck with your data. I want to know, wait a minute, what's the bridge to the future here? And so when leaders understand that emotional intelligence is removing the roadblocks for people, allowing them to make their best decisions in a timely manner. And here, this is a word that's overused today, but it is so appropriate to this moment: agility.
Okay. Yeah.
If you want to have an agile organization, it's not about a system, it's not about a process, it's about creating agility inside every one of your people. Because people are the most valuable asset any organization has. There's nothing more important than people. Systems aren't going to do it for you. Processes aren't going to do it all by itself. People are going to be the energy that gets things done.
So the agility thing, kind of keeping it straightforward, Steve, when I think of agility, I think of my ability to move in multiple directions in a very quick and efficient way. That's just my sort of, you know, description or analogy. Am I close? Is that having a workforce that their ability to flex and to change, but to do it in a very, when I use efficient, because just doing it quickly can also mean like haphazard.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Well, efficiently, maybe that implies a certain level of quality, a certain amount of skill, but able to do it fast. Is that what you're kind of meaning there, or?
Yes, it is. Let me use just maybe a bit of an analogy here that'll help you understand kind of the way I look at it, at least.
Right.
The speed of change and the speed of growth in our world, the speed of information, is far surpassing the speed of trust, and the speed of agility.
Wow.
So,
Steve, I'm going to interrupt you
yeah.
because that's a great point. Can you just say that one more time?
Yeah. The speed of change, the speed of information, the speed of technology is far faster today than the speed of trust and the speed of agility.
Hmm.
Think of this tidal wave of change and technology and information. We get more information, we get more input in one day than our grandparents got in 365 days. Our brains have not changed that much in 2 generations. So when you think about this overwhelming tidal wave, how do you, number one, how do you survive it?
Yeah.
But how do you get ahead of it? How do you ride that wave instead of just being drowned by it? And it comes down to the speed of trust, the speed of agility, the speed of connection, the speed of influence. All of those things have to accelerate. And
Gotcha.
primary drivers of that is emotional intelligence. It's the competencies in emotional intelligence. So leaders are starting to see the huge value in, and I know there's so much out there about, oh, it's soft skills. No, it's human skills. It's the
Mhm.
ability to connect, build trust, and influence to get the outcomes that you want. And if you can't do that, you can never build a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
So, Steve, what you just described sounds great, and it sounds, like who wouldn't want to do that, right? Yet, I know we have some organizations, be they small, medium, or large, that they struggle with this, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you think are some of the hindrances that keep those, again, if in the sense of decision making, those senior leaders, right, from kind of moving in that direction you just described, because it makes total sense. So
Right.
what are some of the hindrances, do you think, that keep them from doing it?
Well, to be brutally honest, uh, lack of perceived value, lack of perception of return on investment. Uh, it's new and it's different. It's
Mhm.
something they're not familiar with. It's change.
Yeah.
It's dealing with skills that are not as well understood by by many people in business. So, to be very honest, I think what hinders decision makers from moving forward, and part of it is this is an industry, training, development, all of that. It's an industry that's just bombarded. This is that tidal wave of information we talk about.
Yeah.
People are bombarded with, oh, send your people to this 2-day leadership training camp. We will stamp their certificate at the end of those 2 days and they will be leaders. Wrong. We know from learning methodologies that micro learning in combination with practice is the fastest way for adults to learn new information and to apply it in their lives. And
So
so,
Steve, go
yeah,
ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted you, but go ahead. Keep going.
we know that we've created processes and procedures, methodologies to do that. Bite-sized learning. I mean, I'm not going to go into a leader and say, we want about 11 hours of your people's time every week, and we're going to train and we're going to code. And they're going to look at me saying, just, I hope you make it out the door before I throw something at you. Because people work in their whirlwinds. And there's this incredible VUCA world out there, the volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world we live in, where
Mhm.
things are happening all the time, where clarity is rare. What we're bringing to them is an understanding that you can get clarity through very good measures that will give you insight to make your best decisions and create a very thoughtful and considered plan that will move you forward faster than any of this other stuff that you're dealing with on I mean, so many people have gone through these different programs that they're going, oh, I went through that and was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that.
Yeah.
So it's about connecting the dots for people. Here's the theory, but here's the practice and here's the outcomes that we see in reality. And that's what we're trying to show people.
So, that's, those are great points, Steve. And it's got me thinking, one of the things that you kind of alluded to there was the micro learning.
Yes.
Which to me, it draws a word picture in my head about we're going to go slow, we're going to take small bites, and we're going to grow and we increase speed efficiently, right? Because I get that image in my head also of someone who's on a bike and they're pedaling and then they start pedaling really, really fast, and all of a sudden there's a downward hill and they're just going and going and going, which implies at some point out of control. Another thing that makes me think about from an employee perspective, because I want to touch a little bit on that other side, is the employee's perspective about what's happening. I had a conversation with a former colleague of mine from some years ago, and he said to me, life sometimes is like you feel like you're on the freeway going 75 miles an hour, and there are a bunch of these road signs and billboards, and it's coming so fast. You got to keep your eye on the road and stay focused on driving, but you got a little bit of the message. But by the time you saw the message, you were already past it. You can't turn around and you're just going and going and going. And he said, I need, and kind of he was speaking collectively too, we need opportunities to slow it down.
Yeah.
Not as you alluded to, right? That, we're going to take 11 hours a week with Steve and Eric to learn about how to, but where they can get those specific times to absorb it. So with that, thinking of the employee's perspective, right? And again, maybe I'll draw the kind of description of, I was just hired. I was hired because I had the qualifications, I had the background, I had the education, and I'm coming in the door, maybe neutral on emotional intelligence. What are some things you would say to that person, recognizing that they may or may not be going into an organization that has the value alignment and all that together? What are some things you would tell them or maybe advise them, Steve? Here's how you could leverage emotional intelligence, even if it's limited knowledge, to make your start a good start.
Yeah. Wow. Another 2 hours. Great question. And I think it really comes down to this. One of the biggest issues we have right now in the workplace is engagement.
Yes.
And frankly, it's a lack of engagement. Mm-hmm. The best definition I've heard of engagement, it's the emotional commitment that somebody has to the work and the effort. How much are they willing to truly invest themselves in what's going on?
Wow.
So if you take that as a lens, that lens can help you bring focus. The average American worker gets distracted every 3 minutes. Every time you get distracted and then go back to your original focus, you lose a percentage of your focus. You lose a percentage of energy. Mm-hmm. And I would love to spend time going through the brain chemistry of what happens here.
Right.
But basically, what I try to tell people is there's a part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, that is the part that's learning new things, mm-hmm. innovative, creative, highest decision-making, all of that. It's the executive part of the brain mm-hmm. that takes the most energy, and frankly, it can only take so much in a day's time.
Right.
So building some healthy boundaries around what you will focus on and how you can best navigate the emotions that are triggered when you feel overwhelmed or when you feel uncertain. Building emotional intelligence builds resilience, it builds agility, and whether you're talking to an employee or an owner, it's good for everybody to know. If you're the owner, I'm telling you, the guy who started today, doesn't know what you know about this company. Don't expect this person to know what you know. Don't expect to sit down for 2.5 hours and divulge your entire war chest of information and
Mm-hmm.
expect them to take it all in.
Yeah.
It has to be in manageable pieces. People need time to process. So to your point, there is a rhythm to the way that the brain works that is most effective. And that is input, thought and consideration, practice, process, repeat, or
Okay.
what we call engage, activate, and reflect.
Yeah. 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 Um, so as we kind of transition a little bit here, I know that you have a great deal of passion for sales organizations. I know you guys do work with multiple areas or verticals, if I can say it that way. But tell us a little bit about your work in the sales world. And Steve, I have our audience at a disadvantage. I already know a bit about your company and some of the things you're doing, but you want to kind of open up a little bit about what are you guys doing in the sales world right now?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that. I hate to see people stuck. I hate to see people who are trying to be successful and just can't seem to get past some things that are keeping them from being successful.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had on my mind for a very long time and creating an assessment that would allow insight into revenue generation. And, what is this whole thing about sales? And, if you talk to people about sales, most of the people you talk to, I'm not a salesperson. I never want to be a salesperson, right? It's
Right.
like what I hear is emotion. I hear fear. I hear anxiety. I hear stress. I hear uncertainty. I hear all kinds of things. All of those emotions are very normal to all of us. It's what we do with them. It's how we choose to work with them,
Yeah.
navigate them, to build optimism and all of that. So what I did was I studied 30 of the top sales experts in the world, their writings, their books, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that, we found there were 8 traits in common to top salespeople. And it's hilarious because they're all based in emotional intelligence. It's things like initiative and persuasion. You would think, well, wait a minute, that's not emotional intelligence. But here's the deal. If you drill down the iceberg from
Mm-hmm.
the top, what you can see is
Yep.
the waterline. What's below the waterline are experience, knowledge, IQ, all that kind of stuff. And way below that, emotions drive behavior that drives performance.
Yeah.
So what we've done is created an assessment as a partner with 6 Seconds to identify, using the 6 Seconds model that's highly validated, probably the widest used emotional intelligence assessment in the world, the
Yes.
most highly validated. And we're pulling these 8 factors right out of that validated assessment, but we're doing it in a way that is very understandable to anybody who's ever been in sales. It's terms that you would understand. How resourceful, how accountable, how much do you apply direction, initiative, persuasion, friendliness, understanding, those things that drive people. Then what we did was we put them into a wheel and we measure how much they're applying each of those 8 factors in relative percentages,
Mm-hmm.
which gives us an understanding of, are they more short cycle focused or more long cycle,
Mm-hmm.
more relational or more transactional. Once you start to determine those things, we come up with sales styles. And then from there, we do talent analysis for companies. We help identify what the most productive and profitable style is,
Mm-hmm.
develop development plans to help people move in that direction. It's just been, we've had the assessment's been out less than a year at this point,
Yeah.
We've got many people across the globe who have become certified in the assessment and are currently using it. We have large projects going on in South Africa, in Turkey, in the United States, in Australia. There
Hmm.
are some wonderful things going on. And I'm just excited because it was the missing piece, it was the missing link for people in sales. Because here's what happens: people get sold in training and development and sales on this technique or this approach. None of that makes any difference if you don't first connect, build trust. Those are the key things of emotional intelligence. Then you can apply whatever technique you want, but until you connect with people, understand them well, understand their decision patterns,
Hmm.
understand what emotions are driving them, so that you can build trust with them. I mean, it's very hard to make a sale when you don't build trust, and good luck making a second sale.
That's a really good point, Steve. That's a really good point. So, thanks for sharing that. And as when we get to the end, I'll give the audience an opportunity to know how to reach out to you if they want to learn more about what you're doing in that regard and beyond. One of my favorite parts, and it's probably going to become the age-old tradition of doing the Spirit of EQ videocast, and that is, who or what inspired you to get into the kind of work that you're doing?
You know, it really comes down to a story of two fathers. My earthly father, that, was such an amazing example to me. He's a psychologist. He's done this work for, I don't remember how many years at this point.
Right.
He's 88 or 89 this year. I need to be better on my math, um, but he was such an inspiration. But he added the spiritual side in his example to me. So I have a heavenly father that is so much more of an inspiration. And,
Hmm.
and that faith walk to me is a big part of what makes me who I am. It's a big part of my story. And so much of my work is based in that desire to see the need and to help meet the need, whatever that may look like, whatever the challenge might be, whatever the trial is. It has built in me many of the things that honestly, I think emotional intelligence is a gift from above, because it's a tool set that really helps us connect with probably the greatest creation ever, and that's us. That's people.
Wow. Wow. That's great. That's great. Steve, I can't thank you enough for joining me. I hope you'll come back because I'll invite you.
Absolutely, I would love to have these conversations.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. So as we come to a close, Steve, if people do want to reach out to you, get a hold of you, what's the easiest, best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I think my email is the easiest way to do that, and it's just Steve, Steve, at GSCFIt. That's G as in Goodner, S as in strategic, C as in consulting, FIT.com. We shortened the whole name thing because people were saying I'm not typing all that in there. But that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. And then, I'll be happy to return your email, and my phone number will be on there. And I look forward to meeting new people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. As well, audience, as always, if you'd like to get in touch with us at Spirit of EQ, you can do that at my email address, which is this simply Eric, ERIC, at spiritofeq.com, or you can reach out via our YouTube channel as well. With that, thanks for everybody for tuning in, and I hope you have a great day and week as well. Take care. All right, Steve.